All right, so let's talk about ideas. I think in the creative community as a whole, the most hated question is, how do you get your ideas? Because it's hard to say. Sometimes ideas just come to you, sometimes not. And anyway, that's not a very interesting question to me. For me, the interesting question is, how do you know if an idea is good? Because I have ideas all the time, but most of them are bad. And so I wanted to talk a bit about like judging if an idea is worth pursuing or not. And I've put a lot of thought into this over the years that I've tried to write things, because I'll get an idea that is really exciting to me, and then I'll sit down to write and it won't go anywhere. And what I've discovered is I've had a very poor notion of what constitutes an idea. At what point an idea is full enough to begin writing and creating. And so an example, a couple of years ago, I wanted to submit a short story to Writers of the Future. And I had this idea, what if the alien invasion happened, but instead of coming from outer space, they came from the deep sea? I still think that's an interesting question, but it's not a big enough of an idea. It's not full enough to write a story. That is the context that a story might occur within, but it is not a story idea. And when I sat down to write it, I got a story and I submitted it. But in retrospect, like, there's really no story there. It's just kind of a jumbled mess of unconnected events. And it's kind of disappointing. So more recently, the story I just submitted to Writers of the Future last week is about memory. I've always thought memory is interesting and how memories are not trustworthy. But how they're really all we've got, right? If you didn't have the ability to formulate any memories, would you even know you existed? You would just be aware of the instant of the moment. And if you couldn't record that memory at all, like, you wouldn't be able to connect two thoughts together. You wouldn't be able to perceive motion or interactions or anything else. And so memory is pretty important to us, but it's famously untrustworthy, right? And so that's always been interesting to me. And I was spending some time thinking about it. And the idea came to me, what if there was the technology to change your memories, to rewrite them, to turn the painful ones into happy ones or whatever else? And that to me was interesting because on one hand, it was sort of appealing. There are certainly memories I have that I'd be happy to get rid of. But on the other hand, it was also sort of sickening because, like, what a horrible thing to do to yourself, to fill your head full of lies that you really believe on purpose, right? And so that was the idea I had. But again, it's not a story yet, right? Like, this is sort of a theme. It's a thing that you could maybe write a story about, but there's no story. In order to have a story, you need to have characters and they need to be doing something. And what I've learned in the past year or two, I've watched a lot of masterclass.com. Highly recommend those. There's like 9 different famous authors who talk about their process and how they create stuff. And then Pixar, actually, the animated movie company, put a course on Khan Academy, and I think it's totally free. And they talk about their creation process. And in all of this, what I've learned is a story is when you have a character who wants something and then has obstacles they have to overcome to get it. And a really good story has a transition point somewhere in it where the character learns a lesson that makes them realize the thing they wanted isn't the thing they actually need. And you as the author are always trying to drive your character toward the thing they need. And the reader might understand long before the character does that they need something that is not the thing they want. But the character has to get beat up and overcome challenges and stuff before they realize, oh, what I really need is this, and then resolve to pursue that. And something I learned recently from a YouTube video that I don't remember what it's called, but I'll try to find and link in the comments or the description or something, is that the need and the want need to be closely related, right? It can't be like, I want this thing, but I need something that's totally unrelated. It has to be a smooth transition from one to the other. And so with all of this jumbled together, you start to understand what a story is. And you might have this idea about the alien invasion coming from the deep sea, or about being able to willfully change your own memories, but you don't have an idea that you can sit down and write until you have a character who wants something, and something stands in between them and the thing they want. Because a story typically at least in Western culture, which is the only culture I really know, is overcoming stuff to achieve some kind of goal. And so that's been really insightful to me. And as I thought about this memory story, I thought like, okay, well, what if you have this character who doesn't know that his whole life is a lie, that at some point had his memories changed, but as part of that change had all memory of having his memories changed removed. And so he thinks he is one person. He thinks he's done all these things with his life. He thinks he has these relationships with these people, and he doesn't. Well, then how does he discover that he doesn't, right? Like how does he discover that all of that's a lie? That could sort of be a sort of inciting incident at the beginning of a story. And then what does he do about it? It seems very natural for him to want to have a very strong desire to find out the truth about his past. When did he get these memories changed? Why did he get them changed? What are the old memories that he got rid of? That's a pretty strong desire, a curiosity that I think most people would want to have filled, and that I'm hoping readers would also want filled. But then there's going to be all sorts of obstacles there. It was really easy for me as a writer to think, well, like, you know, the company that does this is probably pretty protective of that stuff. And so he has to get through them, and like, maybe they don't even know, maybe he has to, and there were just all these different ideas that I could play around with. And as I wrote the story, I could think, well, what if this is in the way? And I could write the scene and see if I liked it or not. And what if this is in the way, and try that and see how it goes. And then once that was all done, I had a draft, and I could look through it, and then I could ask myself, what is this story really about? I've already done a bit about aboutness. And so you can go watch that and see how it turns out. But what I realized is you have an idea, and then you flesh it out in a first draft. And that first draft is really the first time that you get to see, at least the first time I got to see, what the idea actually looks like as a story. And does it hold up? And are there parts that are not working? And why are they not working? And that's where the aboutness piece comes in. But I don't think you can really know what something is about until you can see it in front of you, either as a very detailed outline or as a completed first draft. So that's my thought on ideas. I don't know where ideas come from, but it seems intuitive to me that as I just go throughout my life, I'll occasionally think of things like, what if this? Or, oh, that it would be interesting if that. And that's a context that you can put a story in, and you start compiling them together. And eventually you have an actual idea that you can start writing on. So that's my thoughts on ideas. Let me know what you think.